Hi YouTube, I'm Darren Rogan. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing mobile phone development. Should I develop fully native or cross-platform? And what are my options? Let's get started. Building a mobile phone app or planning to? Should you go fully native, hybrid, cross-platform? And what are my options? I'm sure you've heard the buzzwords. You've heard of the React Native, the Cordovas. What are those? Well, let me break it down for you. The smartphone market is broken into two dominant platforms. The iPhone with iOS and Android with a slew of manufacturers, the primary one being Samsung. They have their own languages. The primary language for iOS is called Swift, and for Android, it's Java. If you're writing a fully native application, you need to write in one language, being Swift, used to be Objective-C, and a completely different language being Java. Now, not only that, they are very different architectures, different tools for building screens and networking, etc. So they are completely different. They are French and Italian. They're both Mediterranean languages, as in a mobile language. And in a large organization, you will have a specialized Android team and a specialized iOS team. But if you're like me, talking about solo bootstrapping, is a fully native application the way you want to go? What is the application for? And what functionality are you going to do? The majority of applications that I see are really basic forms. They're data entry using some of the sensors of the phone, but primarily it could be Messenger, it could be just typing. If that is the primary interaction use case, then you don't have to go fully native. There are these cross-platform tools that means you can write in one language mostly and then deploy to both Android and iOS. And that's why it's called cross-platform, because you get two platforms with a similar or to the same code base. At least that's what we've been saying for all these years. Now in reality, there's tweaks that you need to do in each platform, so it's never completely generic. Each large organization will probably end up with a fully native application. And why? Because fully native is the smoothest interactions. You're closest to the power of the device, which means you can really polish navigation, dealing with the individual components. It gives the maximum amount of freedom to your development team to build awesome products. But it is a specialization. I do think in a trajectory of a company, there's generally a point as you become a large enterprise where you nearly always want to have a fully native application. But it really does depend. If you're doing video or you're trying to do computer vision models, at this point, fully native is the way to go. I'll be looking at the hybrid options in upcoming videos. The use of the camera and other sensors being very energy intensive, you probably do want to drop down to that core level. Now, in saying that, there are other hybrid solutions that do give you rather granular level. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and say Android or iOS. Now that depends also on your target market. Who is this application for? Is this application for wealthy people? Well, they probably have an iOS from what we can tell from the demographics and ownership that you can look up on the internet. You can even look up to see how many devices are popular, so then you can understand the targeting of the device for yourself. And it also depends on the markets that you're going to really want to make sure that you are giving your startup or your business or your app idea the widest audience that you can in the right target market. Now, if you're trying to sell applications, iOS generally has a more profitable market than Android. and a lot of people do start with an iOS build. If you're looking around Silicon Valley, there's a lot of iOS users and VCs and so forth, so they do like to create an app version for those people. But I do also know other VCs, etc., that have Android devices, so it's not a set in stone thing. If you took your user base, or your preferred user base of 100% of your users, what percentage has got that device that you're looking for? Are they in the early adopters or will try things out? If that is that overlap, be it Android or iOS, and that is the platform for you. Or you can do something like, I have an iPhone, so I'm going to build an iOS app. That works too, but there's more to it than that when we actually start considering the business implications. We've discussed fully native. There are languages like Objective-C and Swift in iOS. As for Android, it's primarily Java. Google have also released Flutter, but that's more of a design paradigm, and it has got a tool chain where it compiles down into Java, so it's still a Java stack, but you're just isolated from that. And you will see that in the hybrid options, that there's like this layer here, which is like the operating system. You can't get away from it, you're always going to be on it. But then other ones have different access. Are you pushed up into a walled garden, which has limited access, but it sorts all the stuff underneath? Or do you have like direct access, but then the guardrails and walled garden protections aren't there? All of these options are valid if you have the expertise to what can you do in the time frame. Unless it's a learning exercise. I do like to play with technologies, even though I may not be bringing them to market in a product, but I just want to evaluate the technology and see how it works for me. You may be awesome at one technology, but every technology sunsets. And I've been through multiple technology cycles of having a good set of knowledge in technologies that are no longer in use. That's the thing about tech and startups. It evolves so quickly. Can I or have I developed native apps? Yeah, I have, but I generally don't. And the reason I don't is mostly to do with, at the early stage, I'm looking to get a maximum from the time spent. And if I can do a cross-platform technology, then I'll probably do that because I can release iOS and Android at the same time. And then I can get my app in the hands of more people and get more feedback to understand if this is something that people are interested in or if it's going the right direction. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule. Lots of people build different types of apps, and that audience expect a certain thing. To recap, if you decide native, you have to decide the platform. iOS or Android. It's rare that you actually want to be releasing on both at the same time. You're going to end up with a small development team generally, focusing on one platform and then switching over and focusing on the other. Building in tandem can happen, but it just rarely does. It's probably better to focus on getting a product out quickly on one, be Apple or Android, and then iterate on that before releasing another. This is a common pattern that we've seen lots of other companies do. Personally, I'm normally going for more of a hybrid option because I want the maximum number of users to see my application as quickly as possible. I'm not against native apps, and if I was doing computer vision or a video messaging platform, for example, live streaming, a periscopy thing, has to be live. Anything with video interactions or ML, computer vision models, and it needs to be done on device, edge processing, that all has to be fully native, at least for now anyway. But what does fully native mean? Fully native is probably a misnomer. What I mean is you're writing in the language of that operating system, which means you're writing iOS, you're writing Swift code now, and you're writing Java on Android. Some of these hybrid technologies have tool chains that actually cross-compile down into Java or NDK, which we don't really need to go into, but for all intents and purposes, down onto Android and compile down into Objective-C or Swift. Now, this is a big delineation in the hybrid technologies. Do I have a tool chain that cross-compiles down into an operating system, or do I compile down into basically web technologies with hooks into the technologies within the phone? Now, these hooks that hook into the phone could be for contacts, phone numbers, making a call, most likely GPS, the speaker, videos, that sort of thing. But cameras Cameras and GPS are the most common. They are supported in web technologies and can be used in the browser, but they generally have plugins that allow you to have access to that functionality inside the language that you're writing. Cordova is one of the most famous and long-running harnesses that runs a web technology on top of the operating system of a phone, which allowed you to wrap up any web project and put it inside an application. It had some hooks for configuring icons, splash screens, and had plugins that give you access to the phone's operating system and sensors, being databases, local storage, contact lists, cameras, GPS, etc., etc. Cordova has been around a long time, and Cordova is quite painful sometimes, and there's like a platform folder that when you have a problem you have to trash the whole thing and bring it back, and it's always a pain. But it is rock solid. It has been around for a very long time. I can't even tell you how long it's been around. And I have released multiple apps using Cordova, and many apps that you use on your phone are probably Cordova apps and you would not even know. That is probably a point I should have made earlier. It is extremely difficult for you to determine what is a web app, as in a Cordova hybrid application, or a fully native, even if it's a hybrid cross-compiled or an iOS, Android direct application. A lot of times you can't tell the difference. And it is those interactions with the GPS and the camera or the video, if you're doing filters and the like. Think of Snapchat and Instagram. They would be difficult to do in a non-direct method, to be honest. I digress. I've discussed Cordova, which is, think of it as an underlying platform that creates an abstraction above iOS and Android. It allows you to run basically a web container, which means you can then take web technologies, being JavaScript, HTML, etc., and then put them directly into an app. So when I start it, the local web page runs. Now that's not particularly useful, so we have the plugins to fill in the other parts. Am I building fully native or hybrid? I'm not going fully native because I don't want to build an iOS application and an Android. The app that I'm building is actually a replacement to an existing app, which is already a hybrid application. I'm actually going to be doing a capacitor application. Now, I've never done capacitor, but I know that Cordova is getting old, and I want to see what the new one is like. Is it any good? I'm not too sure. If that interests you, follow along and we'll go from there. I hope to show you what it's really like as a solo bootstrapper who's got another full-time job. Can I launch products on the internet that make money? You'll have to follow me to find out. Then hit the subscribe button and join me on my journey.